And I'm trying something new, so I'm gonna have a. Can I put it on here?
Yeah, you want
Yeah.
me to move
Oh no,
this
that's
one?
fine. I'm gonna have a backup system too.
That way it'll absorb some of the words and it'll use even a bigger vocabulary.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's right.
I think it'll make us all sound very smart. So
That's
so
open. We use that a lot because we're constantly looking up words. It's
And
like,
so we
what
look
the
it up
heck?
both online and in
Yeah.
the
What's the
dictionary.
history of this word?
oh, you just get curious about it.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
so
very cool.
it's always open. We just flip to the page. It's great.
Well, in honor of you, I'll try to find some really bizarre word to slip into this article somewhere. It's like
I'll look it up.
the last one I wrote. I talked to this lovely woman that had a dog named Good Girl, which I thought was really funny, and so I said I'd try to get Good Girl into the article, and I did, and they didn't take her out, so that was a victory.
That's really nice.
So yeah, so we'll see what we can do. So what this one is it's really cool. So Bainbridge Island Magazine, that's kind of a sidelight I do. In the winter issue, their feature article, their big article is going to be this meditation article. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but what I'm doing now is just talking to a lot of sort of leaders in the community, including you guys. So I think it'll be really neat. And what I wanted to start with is just to learn a little about both of you, just where you come from, what kind of work you did and do, and kind of what brought you to this place.
Well, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are questions I know the answers to. And if I don't, I can make up the rest.
Well, that sounds perfect. Good stories are always welcome.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
Okay, I'm a bone marrow transplant nurse. So
Retired.
I've been retired for 11 years or
Okay.
something, or more than that. And so we started meditation many, many years ago when we were living in Seattle.
Okay.
It's around 30 years now.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how far above it is yet, but we'll just say 30 years.
30 plus.
Yeah. So we were in a meditation group that we went to every Tuesday evening in Seattle with a couple who they were a bit eclectic in they were teachers of meditation, but their own personal practice was Tibetan, and
Okay.
they weren't teaching us Tibetan because they weren't qualified, but we went to a lot of Tibetan teachers and learned a lot about the Tibetans with them, and just plain meditation. I mean, mindfulness and meditation was the theme all the time.
All right. And how about you, Sid?
Well, I was an artist the first bazillion years, and then I slipped my artistry into professional massage.
Okay.
That was the last thing I did, and retired that one. But that I didn't retire there because whenever Carol needs a massage, she gets a professional one.
Does that mean she has to pay you for it?
Absolutely not. No, it's a gift that we both have because I've massaged myself out of some big problems too. So,
Excellent.
that's been really helpful, and it is a really wonderful art in itself. I did some ceramics and some silkscreen and.
So did the silkscreen in back of him, and you did this.
I was just going to ask you. It's beautiful.
Yeah, this is sandblasted, and then the drawing up here is
Wow.
Recently.
colored pencil that I did.
And then he did all of that glass work that's in that case.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I did a lot of different media, and I'm still drawing a drawing a day,
Oh great.
and then I'm looking to do some larger pieces, some more like that one, get some bigger ones.
Do you have a studio here, or are you just working?
Upstairs, we're using the master bedroom for a studio office, and it's a very busy room all the time.
I'll bet.
It's alive. It's really fun.
Well, way back 30 plus years ago, what prompted you to get into meditation?
Well, I had meditated earlier, off and on with, because I was also in school with psychology and a psych major. And,
Okay.
and so classes and different events that we would go to. But this, the one that really cemented it was when we went to this group in Seattle with this couple.
Okay.
Yeah, we were invited by a friend invited us to come with her to a meditation group, and so we went and sat with them. there was something really intriguing about it all. And we studied with them for a while, and then they went away on a year retreat
Okay.
back east, and
No, it was right here. Your silent retreat.
back here.
Yeah,
Well, anyway, they did that, and
Cloud Mountain.
we kind of held, it kind of kept the thing going in their house for them. They asked us if we would do that, and so we did that, and then it got to the point where they would just hand us the bell when we walked in the door. So we were taught how to be a facilitator. We've never said we were teachers.
Okay.
Because we have them sit in the circle, Native American style, and everybody's equal. And we don't want this up-down stuff. Because everybody comes every night, Monday night,
Mhm.
and that's why we're as close to a circle we can get in that. It gets more an oval as people come. And that's okay, it doesn't matter what the shape or form is. But we want equality. We want each person to come and be exactly who they are at that moment.
And the reason for that is that we're all each other's students and each
Mhm.
other's teachers. And so if we're in a circle, um, we can see each other and hear each other well.
And
Supposedly.
respond
Makes
really
sense.
well
Yeah.
too. And so that's really one of the basic elements of our philosophy of first we're a facilitator, and then we're all teachers, we're all students at any given time or together at the same time. And it's been really valuable for the people that stay, and it's been growing ever since we started it on its own.
And was this Sangha when you became facilitators? Or have you, like, how did
No,
you transition
we
from?
started this group 24 years ago.
Okay.
When we moved to Bainbridge Island, um, our teachers in Seattle were going to give a 1 year spirituality and everyday life course.
Okay.
And so we went to that, and it just so happened that there was a person in that class with us who we didn't know, but she lived 2 miles away from us. And so suggested that we all suggested let's just sit together. So the
Mhm.
three of us started the group.
That was when you moved here to Bainbridge?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just out of curiosity, what prompted you to move from Seattle to Bainbridge
I
23 years
needed
ago?
to be closer to the plants.
Ah.
Seattle, we were in West Seattle and
Mhm.
had a wonderful area to be in. But I grew up in gardens, and I just needed a garden again. So
Got you.
we looked all over the territory east of the mountains. We just really did some serious research and kept coming back to the island and thinking, well, the island has a specific kind of a quality that you can't get where you can just go from A to B. That interlude of the ferry boat is
Mhm.
just incredible. Really, on Vashon, we lived there for a number of years. That's really a ferry boat, or you own the boat, or you fly in.
Yeah.
And there's something special about that. Um, there's a detox when you get on the ferry boat here. And that's very special. You don't get that if you just go A to B all the time. It just drives you faster and faster. So it's a kind of a meditative place to live, actually.
Which is interesting because that's almost the place I almost always meditate is on the ferry, because that's when I have a block, exactly what you said, a block of
Yeah.
time where I really can't do other things. So it's really great in that
Yeah.
way.
It's a gift that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
People always say, "Oh, your commute must be terrible," but I've been doing it for
really?
6 years, and it takes a long time, but it's exactly what you said. It's that quiet interlude at the beginning and end of the day.
Yeah.
And that time we think is very well spent. I mean, it's just incredible. It's a wonderful thing to do.
That's really, really interesting. When you moved here, were you still going, or I'm sure you obviously
Yeah,
were still going
I was
back and
going.
forth?
I worked at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, and that was up by Swedish, and
Mhm.
so I would just walk up the hill. And then and then it transitioned over to Cancer Care Alliance, and then I went to the University of Washington,
Mhm.
and so I would walk over and then take a bus to the university.
Yep. And you know, I do that now, so that's
Yes.
where I work as well. So
That's right.
it's like we talked about.
That's right.
So back to when you moved to the island 23 years ago,
24.
24, and got together with your other friend and started starting with the three of y'all started the
Yeah.
Sangha then.
And you know who the fourth member was? Was the next door neighbor of the other friend that started the group with us, and that was Elizabeth Turner.
Okay. And thank you for kind of updating me. I didn't want to bug her because I know she's hasn't been feeling well, but
Yeah.
I'm glad if she's rallying a little. That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, you just you never know, and you just have to check in with her.
Yeah.
But I talked to her yesterday, and she was doing okay.
Yeah,
Very
I should have
good.
talked to her yesterday.
So yeah. So
Just
she's
like that surfing film. Say, oh, you should have been here yesterday. Waves were perfect. They look good to me.
you just missed it.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe you can kind of walk me through those beginnings, where you know, at your house, I guess, or
Yeah.
at somebody's house,
It was at our house.
kind of the history since then.
We started in our living room, and it grew very slowly, and just the way it's going now, people would come and go.
Hmm.
And my philosophy, even with the massage, was the people that I can serve will come and stay, and those that I cannot, I invite a help that they can be served by somebody else. It's not a deal like I've got to be number one and top dog. It's like I'm offering a service that I innately have, and that's all. You know, and we want. It's like there's a lot of different meditations on the island. That I applaud because there's lots of different folks.
Now, another thing that's important about our group is that discussion period that we have at the end, because not everybody has that.
That's true.
There's a Grow Community started a meditation group that's going to be on Tuesday evenings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are y'all going to be involved with that?
We'll probably go to it, but Tuesdays aren't the best days for us.
We're really busy with Tuesday.
But that is simply a silent meditation, which is nice, but it's not the same thing as we're doing on Monday evening.
We're building community on the Monday evening. If you have a time of silence, there's some kind of a shift that happens that we all kind of get on one level together. We become, our energies all drop down and we're together. And after that we do a 10-minute walk, and that walk is kind of a interlude into
Transition zone.
into a more active but not super active time. And it's also rather a blessing to be able to go outside and commune with all the other living beings out there. And then when we discuss and we listen, both of them are practices, and some of us are really struggling with one or both of them.
Yeah.
And that gives us probably the best lessons we can. We can read all the books we want and go to lots of seminars, but when you hear somebody that is living their life, practicing or trying out various parts of the teaching, it's unbeatable. I mean, it's really, really neat. And then we start to enjoy and appreciate not only the teachings, but each other and ourselves that we're doing that. It really becomes a sangha, the group that supports the direction that we're working with. So that's really what it's about.
And what do you think? And I've wondered about this for myself. Is the value of meditating in a group versus meditating alone?
It's different. It's definitely
It is different.
Yeah.
And there's both of them are really valuable.
Yeah.
Once in a while I'll be meditating at 3 a.m. If I can't sleep, often that's what I'll do. Is I'll just sit up and meditate, and it takes me to a whole different place. But in a group, that takes me to a whole different place again.
There's so many people that come to the group and say, you know, I haven't meditated with a group, but I can meditate better when I'm with the group, because there's that support, that whole circle of support for doing the meditation.
That makes sense.
Yeah, as I point out that, you know, as we sit together, we are forming an energetic energy within the room around us. And as we share that, we're getting acquainted on an energetic level. It's not always speak and it's not always just touch. You know, it's very, well, our culture doesn't know about it as a rule, but it does exist. And that's why when I say now, every now and then I'll remind folks now, we have created an immense amount of energy in the middle of this room. Take of that what you need for yourself, and then take what you would like to share with others. And it's not proselytizing, it's simply carry that with you through your weekly practice, and it will radiate out. You don't have to do anything, but you just know you have this energy that you just kind of, it's like the more you can learn to love in a genuine way, the more you will be loved. It comes back. And that's not sexual love particularly, it's being really friendly and caring about yourself and others.
Which kind of brings me to my next question. If you could just tell the average person on the street that has no interest in any of this what they would get out of the practice, what would you tell them?
Well, I think people come to practice for different reasons. But a lot of people come because they want to have more um, uh, confidence and quiet and comfort in their life. And meditation can do many, many different things for people. You know, it's good for health. I mean, some people come to meditation specifically because it's recommended for their health, mental health as well as physical health. And so being able to um, come to a focused position in your life instead of always just having your mind going off all directions. Um, that's a skill that has to be developed because it isn't something that's natural to our culture, and so we need to. It's the time that we spend being totally focused that brings us to that level of being able to stay more present with whatever is in our life. And so we can respond better to what's going on instead of having our mind going all different directions.
Exactly. How about you? Do you have other thoughts about that?
I think Carole covered part of the process really well, and I would mention to them that what they get out of it is really what will fit them because they are the explorer. So it's something I can't tell them exactly what will happen for them, like Carole gave a good overview, and they will discover over a period of time what they will discover. I also would mention to them that, well, later on when the people start practicing, they say, well, nothing's happening. I say, well, you won't know where you are now, but as you get time behind you, one of these days you'll be doing some quality in visiting or talking with somebody, and it'll snap, and you go, whoa, a couple of years ago, I would have handled this totally different. This is so much more pleasant, something of that nature. And then you'll know where you were and where you are at the very moment, but it grows. It's just one of those fun things that happens with meditation.
Kind of the inverse of that question is after all these years of getting people started and seeing them going along, what are some of the main obstacles that you see that to the practice?
Well, the person themselves. We have people that have told us, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to come to your meeting tonight," and they don't come for years and years. But life can intervene.
Yeah.
And um, we allow that they will come when spirit moves them, and if it works for them, they will choose to stay. So it's just kind of one of those things, I don't feel that I'm doing anything for them. I'm holding space. Carole and I hold space for people to come find out who they are. It's pretty simple. It's complex, but it's simple.
And in the U.S., what do you think there's cultural and societal obstacles, and especially in the 21st century?
Mm-hmm.
I think the
That's a
answer will be
loaded
yes,
question.
but
Yeah, where do you want to go with that?
you tell me.
Well, okay. In our culture and in our society, especially, everybody talks about how things are getting faster and faster, and there's multitasking all the time, and people are encouraged, not only encouraged, there's a demand put on people to do this multitasking and thinking fast
Right.
and moving fast. And so people, there's a disconnect between the person and themselves.
Exactly.
They need to come back to themselves and learn who they are. And that's the only way they can learn who other people are also. If they're always out there trying to keep up and go faster, they only see surface level. They don't go any
Exactly.
deeper.
And do you think it's more, and I certainly do, that it's more important now than ever? It seems like in this kind of super information rich environment, it's almost a reflection of the mind with everything swirling all the time, that having a practice and having quiet time is probably more important now than it's ever been.
Yeah, I think the practice and the quiet time are essential. And you talk about the now, and then in our group we don't talk politics, but politics is informing all of us all the time. And that's where we need to get back to the loving kindness and being able to not feel like we are always needing to retaliate, but that um, we can move forward and take action in positive ways rather than fighting and being negative. And that's where the Buddhist teachings come in.
Exactly. And do you guys, I was going to say, what is do you have a particular style or type of meditation you're practicing?
Mm-hmm.
And what are not the religious aspects of it from your point of view?
Yeah, for me it's not a religious practice, and it is vipassana.
Hmm.
That's my main practice. Although um, since we have a background with some Tibetan and
Hmm.
some Thich Nhat Hanh Zen, and Mark Lancaster, who's at the Bodhi Center, we sit with him sometimes, and so we do have the other practices, but in terms of being able to be present, they support each other. They all support each other, and so that's where the vipassana is what we've had the most practice with
Okay.
the teachers, the readings, the audio, the workshops, and the retreats are all vipassana. We did do a Thich Nhat Hanh
Mm-hmm.
retreat also,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it was tremendous.
Well, so what is the relationship between Buddhism and your practice? Does that make sense? If it's not if you don't consider it a religious, I mean, Buddhism is a religion, I
yeah.
think.
And I
Well,
consider
it can be.
myself I
It can
consider
can be.
myself a person who does Buddhist practices.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a religion for the Buddha. He didn't care to have it. Pretty much what I understand, Jesus in the beginning didn't either. Um, Martin Luther King didn't want to be a leader of that nature either. They had a purpose of helping and learning on their practice as well. And Buddhism is whenever you give a process to humanity, there will become every kind of a bell curve or a straight line, or however we want to look at it, or a field. It very much like Christianity is a good example. People are more familiar with that. It started out with Jesus um, having disciples, and now look how many different kind of ways there are to get to
Yeah.
enjoy Jesus' teachings. The Buddha is the similar way. Um, it's just as Buddha is said to have written, or not written, but said that there are 84,000 different ways to approach this, and that's why he gave that many different kinds of lessons to touch. And so those 85,000 different ways
84,000, yeah.
go they're individual groups, so it makes sense to them. Doesn't mean they're less Christian. It simply means that this is the way it makes sense to them. And I find that when Carol and I visited many churches for and visited friends and any number of the Christian churches, and there are elements that I really enjoy in all of those. And that cross pollination helps me understand the Buddhism that I'm working with, and helps me that Buddhism helps me understand what they're working with, and accept all of it. It's very rich that way.
And well, I will say also, maybe even modify what I said before. It's the American Buddhist practice, American Vipassana practices.
Okay.
The ones that were brought over here by the Jack Kornfield and Joseph Goldstein and Sharon Salzberg, and started in Boston. And so those the teachers that we've had in this tradition have all been disciples of those people, or people who went to Southeast Asia when they did and learned from teachers.
Okay. I've read all of those people, but I didn't really know the history of, that they were really the ones that brought the practice to the U.S.
They started it in Boston, and then Jack Kornfield started the one down in California at Spirit Rock.
Very good. And as far as you know, are you the oldest running Sangha on the island? It seems like you would have to be,
I have
but
no idea.
Okay.
I wouldn't know.
And are there, like at the Bodhi Center, are there other people running other Sanghas that routinely meet at other times, I guess?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
I mean, Mark Lancaster meets there, and also there's a Tibetan workshops that have been happening at the Bodhi Center.
And those are rich because they are given by a Tibetan Lama, and so they're
from Colorado,
authentic. They're great.
I'll have to try to check that out.
Well, it's not something that you just drop
into.
Oh,
I see.
No,
it's more of a...
That's an ongoing process
Okay.
that you had to start quite a while ago.
Okay.
And
that's part of the authenticity of it.
Yeah, really.
And then when I was talking with Elizabeth yesterday, she said, well, and there's also Refuge Recovery, which is a recovery group that's based on the 12 steps, but it's also based on Buddhist teachings.
Recovery, I get it. Okay.
Yeah. And so, and then Elizabeth, of course, brings in workshops for different people on different things that contribute to the whole spiritual atmosphere there.
And then to bring in another avenue, the Senji-san at the Bainbridge Temple here.
Okay.
He has a very strong practice of marching for peace, and they can march in one march 2,000 miles. They're serious marchers.
These are the folks we see walking around on the highway.
That's a serious practice. They're walking for peace here, and then when they go to large marches that are set up, they really go from A to B, and it's a hell of a long way. So
is that a walking meditation or okay?
Yeah, it is.
How interesting.
And the drum is to keep cadence, and they often sing their
Namyo Renge Kyo.
Yeah, which are kind of almost a mantra for them.
What is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful. You get a whole different rhythm, and it definitely takes you out of all the stuff that's going on. You don't evaporate, but you have a sense of groundedness. It's really wonderful.
So you've participated in that practice a little bit.
Yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, we really enjoy that as well. And that's a kinesthetic way of meditation.
Yeah.
And they are such wonderful people, and they're very friendly and generous. I mean, you can't go to visit Senji without him having you sit down and have tea. And
Yeah. He's wonderful.
So he has a temple here on the island?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I
That's
didn't
something
even
that
know.
you should know about.
I
yeah.
should, see?
Yeah, it's over right. Well, not quite right next to the school, but oh, what's the name of the school?
Which, I don't, which school? Or an
I'm-
elementary school?
Yeah.
Ordway?
No.
Oh.
Oh, it's up on.
Give me a hint and I'll know.
I never read science.
when we go to let's see, when we go to Linwood from here.
Linwood, okay. Oh, Blakely? No?
No, we don't go to Blakely. We
Okay.
go down the
Okay.
lower road, and we actually Hyla. That's the name of the
Oh,
school.
Hyla, yeah, the middle school.
Yeah.
Hyla's the school.
Hyla's the school. In any case, um, the temple is close to there,
Okay,
but it's not on Miller Bay Road. It's on
gotcha.
whatever.
Is it just called, do you know what it's called?
Yeah, Nippon Zan Miyohoni, or something like that.
Okay.
So it it is a Japanese Zen sect, but it's
Okay.
not the Japanese Zen sect that proselytizes.
Okay.
There is another one, Nippon Zan, and some of those people are on the island too, I think.
I thought so, yeah.
And but their whole practice really is the mantra and the walking.
Wonder if he'd be willing to sit down and talk a little bit.
Oh,
That
yeah.
would be really interesting.
Yes. Oh, he is very interesting.
Yeah.
Is the best approach just to go to the temple? I don't know if they have a
Yeah.
website or anything,
At
but
this time, I think it would be.
okay.
Uh,
How
'cause
interesting.
It's open all day long.
He has his residence is right there,
Okay.
and then the temple is right next
And
to the residence.
that temple was deteriorating horribly because nobody was there for a long time, and he came, and he's rejuvenated, absolutely gorgeous. God, it's a beautiful shape.
And he's the fellow we usually see walking around,
Yeah.
leading
Yeah.
sometimes with other people,
Right.
sometimes not.
Hmm.
Well, definitely. Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. 'Cause I don't know anything about that kind of practice.
Yeah.
And what is his practice called again?
Nippon Zan.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a whole history. He can tell you. He used to be a history teacher in his first life.
Yeah, in
He
Japan.
can tell you all kinds of fun stuff.
So he's Japanese.
He's Japanese.
Yes,
Okay.
he's from Japan. And now, if you go out Wyatt, and you go around the little bit of water here, you get on Buckland Hill, you
Yeah.
turn on Buckland Hill Road.
No.
The first left turn is Linwood Center.
Mhm.
Buckland Hill goes all the way
Right.
to
You don't want to go on Buckland Hill though.
the no, you don't actually. It's right about here.
Okay. And I know.
It's just before. No, just before Fletcher Bay. Yeah, just
Yeah,
before
Miller-
Fletcher Bay.
Miller.
And it's on the left as you go from here. It'd be on the left,
Yeah.
Okay.
and it goes down and it's hidden from the. You go down kind of a curving drive. I think it's still,
Yeah,
still gravel.
you might feel like you're lost, but they do.
I often feel that way. So.
Yeah, that's the island.
Just today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
But
okay.
they do have a mailbox with their name on it, and then you have to just go past a house and go down to where the.
Yeah.
And you don't see the temple immediately. You just come to an area where there is some parking, and depending.
Well, you can see it from the parking, but
Yeah.
probably not until you really realize what all the stuff is down
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting what you said about each of these practices enriches each other, and when
Yeah.
you learn what they do, it enriches what you do. I think that's
Mhm.
really interesting. There's no wrong answer. It's just a lot of approaches.
Yeah.
You know
To
what
the
you could
same
do?
Yeah.
You could go for one of his services. He has a service twice a day.
Really? And can you just walk in
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
for that?
Yeah. And people will drum, and you can do that or not do that. They'll probably hand you a drum though.
Well, yeah, you could, yeah. There's a drum they set it when you walk in. They're very delighted, and they'll put a cushion for you if there isn't one already, and they'll hand you a drum so you can drum in cadence with them if you care to. You don't
And then
have
they
to.
will chant, and
It's
and-
written right on the edge of the altar. There's a big altar, beautiful
Okay.
thing, and it's written right there. So if you need to, you can read it for a while before you
Yeah,
learn
I,
how.
I wouldn't just do it without knowing the rhythm,
Yeah.
but you'll learn the.
And it's pretty easy if I just showed up for a service.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be bothering anybody or.
No,
Okay.
no, everybody's welcome, and they would be delighted to have somebody.
So
The
do we
same
know?
as our group, and
Yeah.
uh, it's an open group. That's the joy of it.
Oh, it's been so welcoming and so easy, you know.
Great, I'm glad to hear it.
So for the service there, they have them twice a day, and the first one's at 6:30, isn't it?
Something like that.
Like that.
The afternoon.
A.M.
I am. Okay.
And then the afternoon one is more like.
5 or something. You might check on the web. I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if they have a website.
I don't know.
Yeah, I never give the times for that.
So that's why it's funny. In my little journey here is kind of a microcosm of what you're talking about. Literally, everybody I talk to opens up more people
Yeah.
to talk
yes.
to.
Yeah.
Carol used to have a list of everybody on the island so we could assist people in
All the
finding
all the
something.
groups, yeah.
Maybe it would help them. But we don't have a up-to-date list anymore. I mean, it's just really wonderful.
So that's been really interesting. I'll just have to figure out how to rein it all into something that makes sense.
It's going to make a big basket, huh?
Yeah, I know. Then you have, I don't even know how long this one's allowed to be, but I'll have 1,000 words or something to
Yeah, right.
to
Squish it down
to
into
squish it
there.
down into. But that's
Keep going
that's
over
part of the
1,000
challenge.
pages.
Well, anything else you guys would like to share that we didn't cover? This has been absolutely wonderful for me.
Well, I don't know.
It's a
Once
wide
we
open
get
question.
Going, I get excited. We go on and on.
Oh,
so
me
I have to
too.
be very careful not to go on and
Well,
on.
part of it, for the what we try to establish in our group, we have the practice time together, and then we have the time where we can learn from each other. But that's also community building, and I think we mentioned community, but I think that's an important part of it.
Oh, definitely. It's on purpose. We're mindful of that.
And it's support for the practice, for being able to continue your practice.
And I think it's interesting to see others and how the practice manifests itself in real life.
Mm-hmm.
These people from all kinds of walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And one total aside, but some folks I've been talking to recently, so it's on my mind, are people that have been starting practices in elementary schools and middle schools. Because one thing that occurred to me just while we were talking is we talk about all the information now in the 21st century, but think if you're born into that. We had a time in our lives when it wasn't like that, but whatever swirl we all have in our minds, when you're born into this kind of information-rich environment, how much more important is it for kids to have some alternative or break from that?
Yes, I think that is really important.
You bring to mind one of the more valuable elements of this whole practice for me is that one of the main teachings that I practice is come down, center oneself. That's the meditation element. So you quiet yourself, just quiet down, and be here with what is now, and don't tell any stories. No stories, please, because if it's a suffering kind of a situation, if we tell stories, the suffering will enlarge. If we don't tell stories, the suffering will dissipate into what is now, and we can deal with it. We'll have clear eyes, clear mind to deal with what's coming up, and it won't be the horrendous situation we would create it to be. And that helps me every day, seems like, in some way or another.
That's kind of the second arrow story, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
See, I was paying attention.
And the third arrow and the fourth arrow.
And the third arrow and the fourth arrow.
Really creative sometimes. And it's like, whoa.
And that is how it every day makes your life better. And one thing I've noticed, I wonder if this has been the case for y'all, is the actual practice of meditation to me is all about failing and starting over and over and over.
Right.
And I think that I've already seen that apply to my life. When you're down on yourself about something you failed at, you go, that's okay. Or exercise or anything in your life.
Yeah.
You fail and you just start again. And that seems that's been really important for me.
Yeah.
And isn't that the way humans learn? All animals and beings that we've noticed learn by uh, trying something, and if it works, they continue that way. If it doesn't work, they back off and they find another way to try. And it's just, that's what we've got. So it actually engenders creativity and a lively participation, which is really wonderful. And with all that, you mentioned amazing ways of being with information now. It offers a way to step aside from that. Say, okay, all that exists. It's out here. I know it's there. But right now, I want to have a peaceful place to reside in stillness.
Yeah, and I think
So-
an important
Yeah.
point, because some people have the misconception that you're just withdrawing from society. But if you can come into that place that Sid is talking about, then you are so much more open to society and what's going on. I mean, you can face face the reality that's out there.
If you can't love yourself, if you can't accept yourself as whole and viable and you belong on the planet, then how are you going to do that for anybody else? Anything else? That's one of the first things I learned in meditation years ago was
Yeah.
that you have kindness for yourself, and as we learn, we make mistakes. Well, are they really mistakes, or are they the parts that don't work for us and we need to go in another way?
Right.
And be kind to ourselves. Oh well, that's okay. Now what would you like to try next? So there's this wonderful creativity and kindness, all the time kindness. And when we're not kind, it hurts. And we
Yeah.
think, oh my goodness, that's not what I want to do. So what am I going to do now? How am I going to enter into this again?
When I talked about obstacles, what do you think about people that equate meditation with passivity? Because kindness doesn't equal passivity or being passive in your life or not taking strong stands. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a really wonderful whole big discussion because um, next month,
No, this coming month, actually, July.
well, not the first time in July, but our group is going to talk about activism.
And people are ready to put away, but activism, yes.
Well, we also, Sid and I have a small meditation group that meets here also.
And if you happen to be passing by,
The lights are on.
it's at noon. There'll be a sign in
At
the
noon on a Monday.
Oh, really?
morning.
Yeah,
You're welcome. It's an open group as well.
At noon on Monday, huh?
yeah.
Okay.
And it's
People
just a
really find
handful
it
of
refuge.
people.
They tell us this is refuge.
Thank you. I'll
anyway-
take you up on that when I'm
Yeah.
here.
Anytime.
So let's see, what was I talking
Oh,
about?
passivity
Yeah.
or activism.
Right. So we're going to be talking about activism, and I mentioned that in the group here. I don't consider this a Buddhist group. It's a mindfulness group. The one in the evening is based on Buddhist
Okay.
teachings, and this one I read a poem at the beginning and a poem at the end, and wherever discussion goes, that's fine. Which is different than the evening.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that we're going to have Buddhist activism, and one of the people said, well, isn't that an oxymoron? And I thought, well, she doesn't know anything about Buddhism.
And look at we point out Thich Nhat Hanh did Buddhist activism. He and his people were helping everybody in that war. They took no sides. They didn't differentiate people and people. If you were wounded, they would assist you, and so they were killed by both sides. That is what we're talking about. Not that all of us can do that. In a way, Carole and I are doing our break with the society and holding this space for people. That's right now our major offering. It seems like a non-offer, but we have been told by many people that have come and many have had to leave, but that the practices have immensely been valuable to them.
I have an aside here. Do you
Okay.
want an
Yes.
aside?
I do.
This is the fourth place we have met. We started in our house, and then it got too small, so we had to go to Siebold Hall,
Okay.
and so we went there. And then the city took over, it was gifted, took over Siebold Hall, and it became more expensive for us. And so that put us on another search, and we ended up at Rolling Bay Presbyterian Church.
Mhm.
And they were wonderful there. We really
That's
enjoyed it.
Yeah, we knew that group before we got there. It was wonderful when we were there too.
But
They didn't want us to leave either.
Yeah.
They really hated to lose us, and we hated to move. But we were going to the Bodhi Center.
yeah, I mean, we had the offer of the Bodhi Center, and it was like, we can't pass this one up.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Is the Bodhi Center relatively new?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elizabeth and Kent, her husband, bought that property, I don't know how many years
I don't
ago.
know. Yours don't seem to have edges for us.
Yes.
Anyway, they bought that property, and she'd been there for a while, and then so I don't even know how long we've been meeting there. Maybe
No.
3 or 4 years.
We needed to move from the church, and that's why it was sad for everybody. They had put in new carpets,
Oh yeah.
and the outgassing of.
I see.
We got ill every time we walked into the building, and we could not stay.
So it was a physical reason you had
Yeah.
to leave.
It was a physical ejection, and I asked Elizabeth, would you be interested in having our group come to you? And she went, you bet.
I see.
It was like, man, the door's been open for weeks.
Well, and you'd
She
known
was
her, you
more
said,
than
from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she
Yeah.
was thrilled.
That's how we met her. I mean, she came to the meditation group at our house.
And so it was really thrilling for us too, because it already had immensely wonderful energy in the room.
Yes.
So did the church we were at, but this was a little bit different flavor, and it really fit beautifully.
And then, of course, Elizabeth has the website for the Bodhi Center, and so people learn.
Yeah.
Right. That's how I learned.
Yeah, learn about the group through her website. Plus, there are offerings that they have at the Bodhi Center.
Yeah.
We had this last week. We had on Monday this week we had 7 new people,
Wow.
and some of those new people were ones that had gone to a workshop on the weekend at the Bodhi Center and learned about the group.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry I
And
missed that.
some of those people will stay, and most of them won't, because that's the way people
Right.
come into groups and go out of groups. We learned that way early on.
And that's a wonderful lesson over the years. It's no grasping. Don't
Right.
grasp. Oh my God, what did I do wrong? They didn't come back. Not at all. It's a situation that they're working out.
Right. It's impermanent.
Yes,
It's
right.
permanent. Yeah, it's okay.
Well, I'll be very interested in the wise action discussion, because I think it's something you think about, like in today's, not to get into politics, but today's political world.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously want to be very strong against things you think are wrong. So which is a degree of fighting, or at least
Well, sure.
action, and how do we fit that in? So
It's a back pressure anyway.
yeah.
Fighting is a little bit out over the top, I think.
Well, I'm not sure what the proper word is, but it's certainly
No, we
the
haven't
opposite
yet.
of
Maybe
passive.
We'll have to come up with it.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's something, it can be very strong and very active and
Yeah.
still fit into the general
Yeah. And
idea
and
of
to
what
be
we're doing.
truthful, I really don't know what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
We have teachers that have talked about action. They talk about, wise action is something that we've been going through the Eightfold Path, and wise action was part of it. But we're going to interrupt the Eightfold Path a little bit and go into the activism and see what happens with that. But I'm not sure even how we're going to approach it yet.
Well, I think right now it's very resonant, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
This-
It'll unfold its own. We don't
Yeah.
have to work hard at it.
But yeah,
And so far the group has been really good about not getting into the political discussion
Yeah.
stuff, and it's going to be really delicate at talking about activism.
You mean just to kind of stay above the specifics of
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
doing
Right.
right now?
Generalities will probably be necessary, and it, we point out that it's a mindfulness practice not to drop into just argument about who and them and us and all that stuff. So
Well,
it's a great opportunity.
yeah, kind of like you were talking about earlier about, getting out of all the swirling thoughts. It's almost the
Right.
same thing, just in
Yeah.
the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're-
Always
Within
relates.
community. So now you're really talking about swirling thoughts, and then you can say, well, let those pass, and let's stay here.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a demonstration on Saturday at the Federal Building.
Yeah,
It's
right.
but we're going with a person who has been with the group for a long time, and I feel real comfortable that we can stay centered
Mm-hmm.
in a situation like that.
That's great. I've been on more marches with my children than
Oh yeah.
ever before. If there's a benefit to what's going on right now, it's
Yeah.
certainly been a wake up call, and it's,
Yeah.
certainly made us very active. And I think that's great you're doing that, because it's a little empowering. You feel like I'm not just
True.
sitting here
Oh,
letting
it is.
things happen.
And it's also makes a difference because
Yep.
there are folks out there counting, and they take those counts serious. When it starts coming up in cities all over, then we hear that some small towns in Alaska
Oh,
have
yeah.
marches,
Yeah.
and when you get plugged in like that, you're telling people this isn't right.
It's like these kids from Parkland, from the high school.
Oh.
Yes.
Not to start digressing, but it makes me feel so good that it's made actual practical difference.
Yeah.
It's saved people's lives
Yeah.
already,
Yeah.
and it's,
That's
it's,
spot on. That's not aside at all. That's exactly what we're talking about.
well, that's great. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. This has been absolutely delightful, and
Well,
you're very.
you can put it down that we had a delightful time sharing time. I didn't take any. You didn't take any.
And if there's anything that comes up after you're working with this,